Welcome to the Black Script Storytellers. My name is Kevin Marable, and today our guest is a writer, director, and producer. His brand new film, An Unusual Suspect, is now available on Tubi and is garnering a lot of attention. We have with us none other than the amazing Booker T. Mattison. Booker, thank you so much for joining. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to chat with you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to your guest on your platform.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining. Um, Truly appreciate you reaching out to us, telling us a little bit about your film. I was able to watch your film, and I love the new project that you have on Tubi, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. I like to start off every interview with a very simple question, but some might find it a little difficult to answer. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, and that question is, who is Booker T. Madison?
I would describe myself as I'm a husband and a father. I'm a screenwriter, a director, a tenured professor, an infocrat because I love information and facts and truth. Also a student of the human condition. I'm constantly listening and observing people because I'm in the business of creating characters and you want them to be real and relatable. So I'm always listening and trying to learn more about what it means to be human and how to interact with other human beings.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's always good to learn a little bit more about the person that's in front of the camera, behind the camera, behind the scenes, you know. And so I always ask that question first because it gives the audience a little insight to who you are as a person. But with all that you said, you are a writer, director, producer, and professor. Can you talk a little bit about your origin story and how you got into TV and film in the first place?
Sure, sure. I actually chose radio and television production. I started my academic career at Tidewater Community College in Virginia Beach, where I grew up. And at TCC, before you could register, you had to choose a major.
Mm.
So I'm like, I gotta choose a major. I didn't know what I wanted. I said, hey, go to college. Back in the day, you just go to college. It didn't matter what your major in, just go to college.
Right.
So I'm rifling through the bulletin looking for the discipline with the least amount of math, and I landed on radio and TV production. So I didn't have any grand vision to create visual stories, any of that stuff. So that's how I started with radio and TV production. And a year after I started at TCC, that program was defunded by the state. So I transferred to Norfolk State University in Norfolk, Virginia, and became a mass communications major. But my plan was to be a reporter, eventually move up, be an anchor, despite the fact that I was a production major. So I was learning all of behind the scenes and, the camera and the technical aspects. But in my junior year, I got an internship from the Virginia Association of Broadcasters. And it was a very prestigious internship. They placed me at the ABC affiliate in Norfolk, Virginia. So I was able to, edit and do Chiron and do stand-ups, and a lot of this stuff made air. But I discovered, despite how good of an experience that was at Channel 13, rather than telling other people's stories, I figured out that I actually wanted to tell my own story. So that's whenever I became aware of this concept of film and film school. Before that, it never occurred to me that this was a job that people did, and that's how they paid their mortgage and that kind of a thing. It just wasn't something that I considered before that.
Wow. Wow. So through your college years, you basically learned the craft from top to bottom, so to speak, and through that process, you grew a passion for it. Uh,
Yeah, I would say that, in addition to that, there were transferable skills that I took from mass communications to NYU grad film because you're shooting with a camera. It's a film camera, it's a video camera. You still have to learn framing and composition,
right.
lighting and color theory. So sound recording.
Mhm.
So when I got to NYU, the crazy part was because I also used to be a rapper. That's another story.
Nice, man. Me too.
Oh, really? Okay. Look,
Yeah.
You got the voice too. You got the DJ voice too. You know.
You too, man. For
Oh,
real.
yeah, I was on the air at Norfolk State. Also, so, but I was very comfortable with miking because I had been going in the studio, paying $25 an hour to, go in and record my beats and my rhymes. So I
Right,
was very comfortable with miking. So, in film school, everyone, we all were, trained to be writer directors, but we all had a skill that we learned because we all crewed on each other's films. But I was the dude who did sound because I'd been doing sound,
yeah,
for so many years. So there were a lot of transferable skills from mass communications to film. And then, of course, once I was in film school, becoming an actual filmmaker and beginning to see myself as an artist was, I think, the next step in my evolution as a filmmaker, because you don't feel comfortable calling yourself a filmmaker and an artist
right.
when you first get to film school. It almost sounds presumptuous,
Mhm.
So, I embraced who I was as a filmmaker, a visual storyteller, in film school. So yes, between mass comm and at Norfolk State and grad film at NYU, yeah, I feel like I got a really good education and preparation for the things I'm doing now, and not just the knowledge, but also the relationships, which have been as important as the knowledge.
And so, would you say, because very early on in your film career, I see that you had a lot of short films that you had worked on, produced, written, directed. Maybe I don't know if you had early on had directed, but um, were those some of the very early projects of you coming straight out of school and working on those projects?
Well, the so in film school, I made one. Let me see. I think I made a total of four films.
Okay.
And the first two, no one will ever see them because they were pretty bad.
All
But
good. And we all have our practice works, right?
look, but the challenge, the answer, yes. But for me, I was hoping I was making a masterpiece, but I fell way short. I fell way short. Uh, so my second year film was the first film. It's called Exit 13, and it's available on YouTube. But it was the first film I did, that I sent to film festivals, and it was ranked number one in my class, and and the whole film festival run. That was a new experience for me. So,
Yeah.
and then The Gilded Six Bits, which was my thesis film that starred Chad L. Coleman, Takia Kima, Wendell Pierce, Novella Nelson. That was my thesis film at NYU, and it was an adaptation of Zora Neale Hurston's short story, The Gilded Six Bits, and
Mhm.
it wound up airing on Showtime. When I made it, I wasn't saying, "Hey, I'm making this for Showtime," but I made it as my thesis film. It was a good film, and then Showtime picked it up, and this is back in 2001 when this happened. So yeah, I've been at it for a while, and then of course after film school. There was a period where I wasn't making films. I published two novels. I'm a novelist. I
Wow.
sold radio, and I was still in New York City selling radio advertising. So and then I started when I started teaching, I started doing short films again,
Hmm. Hmm.
which then eventually led to my first feature opportunity, 2022, the BET Plus film, The Sound of Christmas, starring Neo.
Yes. Yes.
And then in 2023, I did my first Tubi original, which was Twisted Marriage Therapist. And now here we are with An Unusual Suspect, my second Tubi original film.
Okay. Well, before we get to where we are today, I do want to backtrack a little bit.
Sure.
You did mention that you also write novels. You're a novelist.
Yeah.
With some of your early work, and then also even lending to your current work, are you transforming your novels into screenplays or vice versa? To have multiple IPs?
So I've published two novels. Honestly, I don't know if I'll publish another book. I'm not, never say never. But I published both of those novels with the intention of making them into films. So
Okay.
my first novel, Unsigned Hype, was published in 2009. And then Snitch
I love it, man.
got published in 2011, and that one actually got a Star Review and Publishers Weekly. They've both been optioned, over the years, but it's a matter of, an option is one thing, but selling it, getting it set up and greenlit
Yeah.
is something else entirely. But yeah, I've been trying to get those, and I still plan to get both of those adapted into something, be it a television series, a limited series, or a film.
Oh, gotcha. Is if you don't mind me asking, is Unsigned Hype anything to do with your rap career or the Source magazine?
That's a really good question. So you, of course, you being a former rapper, you know unsigned hype and the significance of that. So that
Yes,
was
yes.
certainly a part of the title. And it though it wasn't autobiographical, I did borrow very liberally from my own life being a former rapper. My life and then Frankie Cutlass. I remember Puerto Rico.
Oh,
Oh.
yes.
So
Come
Frankie
on.
and I became friends, and he told me he has an interesting story. So I would say it's a combination of some of the wild stuff that Frankie told me as he was coming up, and then my experience trying to make it. And it's completely fictional. But as with any writing, I tell my screenwriting students that every one of your characters should have a healthy dose of you in them because they're made human through your perspective.
Right.
So yeah, it's people who know me and read that book, they see all this. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, I recognize all of that. But Tori Tyson is not Booker T. Madison. But if I was as cool as Tori Tyson when I was 15, I would have been smooth. I would have been smooth. He's a lot smoother than I was at 15.
Right. Right. Of course, we always write ourselves cooler than how we actually are, right? That's pretty dope though, man. I find it interesting that there's a lot more correlation from music to TV and film than most people know, as well as sports into TV and film than most people know. I've interviewed so many people who've come from either the sports world or the music world, and they're just trying to transition and keep that talent going, it's just that tricky thing as we get older, right? And we have to find new creative outlets
That's
uh,
right.
to continue on. But um, I was only asking as far as those novels are concerned because uh, I also just through my journey and through my research, I've noticed that there has been some success with a lot of emerging filmmakers where they'll have IP in several markets, whether it be they start with a novel and then they adapt that novel into a film or short film, and then try to pitch it that way, or they have the film first and then they go into you know the market to sell um, their novel. So I only asked that to see if that was kind of where you were headed
Oh
with
yeah,
your
absolutely.
content.
Yeah. I call myself an accidental novelist because that I didn't set out to say, hey, I'm going to write a novel, and certainly not two.
Mm,
But one of my film school friends, her roommate was she was a publishing consultant,
mm,
and she hired me to ghostwrite a couple of projects. She knew I was a writer, a screenwriter, and a publishing consultant, what they do is an editor at a publisher would say, "Hey, we want a book about this," and then the publishing consultant would go find a writer to write it. So she pitched me the idea of writing a young adult novel.
mm,
And then I came up with the story of Unsigned Hype. The story of Tori Tyson. He's a teenage music prodigy, classically trained on piano, but rather than using his ability to, make Bach, he wants to make beats. So he enters the Unsound Hype demo contest, or sort of fictional New York City radio station, and he wins, and he becomes the most sought after hip hop producer in the game at the age of 15. And it poses the question: if all your dreams came true tomorrow, could you handle the glare of the spotlight? And whenever I was touring the book, I did a lot of middle schools and high schools, and I'd be in their auditorium full of students, and I would pose that question,
mm.
and every hand would go up. Yes, I could handle it. I could handle it. No, they can't. you know, all your dreams
Right,
tomorrow.
right.
Look, I'm 54. I've been around the block plenty times, and if all my dreams came true tomorrow, all of them, I wouldn't be ready. Maybe half of them, but
Yeah,
not all of them. Not tomorrow. I have to level up. To be ready for that.
yeah. It takes time, and a lot of us want things to happen quickly and at the snap of a finger. But to your point, if it all was to happen and work out immediately, how would you handle it, and could you handle it? Um, it's interesting to That's an interesting thought because I think a lot of us want it so bad, but don't really realize all that it comes with. And there's going to be certain aspects that you'll be able to juggle, and then there's going to be other aspects where, oh, I didn't think that this was going to be a part of it. Um,
Unintended consequences, and a lot of them are your people closest to you.
yes, that is a fact for sure. That is a fact. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the film An Unusual Suspect, which stars Christy Leverett, Derek Smith, Kelsey Lee, Don Halfkenny. Um, and the film is about a defense attorney finds herself in a life-threatening situation. If you don't mind, can you talk a little bit about what the film is about without
Sure.
totally giving it away?
Sure, sure. And so also Chris Mayo is
Yes.
and Miles Evans also and Shakira DeMessier. Really great cast. I mean, they did a great job,
Yeah,
but
everybody did. I thought everybody, the entire cast did an amazing job.
so the story is the theme is what you're looking for is often hiding in plain sight.
Hmm.
And that mimics not only our protagonist's journey um as far as dealing with this case, but also her own personal life. So, another thing would be, everything done in the darkness will be brought into the light.
Hmm.
Oh, she's committed to defending those who have been falsely accused, which is something that happens in our community. She's zealous. She's a corporate attorney, but she does pro bono work on the side to fulfill her passion. So, she's defending someone who she feels is wrongfully convicted, and once she's able to successfully get him off with her legal acumen, she discovers that there's far more to the case than she realized, and then she herself becomes a target.
Mm. Yeah, I really thought that you knocked this out the park. I don't really watch a whole lot of Tubi movies. There's a lot of stigma on, on Tubi movies.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
but I do for the ones that, especially the people that I interview, a lot of times the quality of work is a lot better, grander, bigger, bigger budget. And you deliver on this film to me. It didn't seem like a Tubi movie, but as you mentioned, it's a Tubi original, which also makes sense. Tubi entrusted you to create this project and deliver quality work, and I would say that you did deliver quality work here. And everybody, like I said, the entire cast did an amazing job. Your story was amazing, and just kudos to you, man. I really enjoyed this film.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And it's one thing to make something and but it's another thing whenever once you put it out in the world, people respond favorably to it. Because the truth of the matter is, you're an artist, you don't have any idea. You can think this is the dopest thing you ever did, and then you release it, and it's like, man, you're like, I know Nas think that the albums that came after his first one, I
Right.
know he thinks they were just as good. I love Nas.
Yeah, right.
Your
Me too.
first album, no, 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 none of the other ones, and he got classics after the first album, but none of the other albums can touch it. You
Oh,
know. So,
I have to argue there real quick.
okay, what do you think? Which
I
one? What do
would,
you
I
think?
would, I would definitely at least put it. It was written in there. It was written and
Just
Illmatic.
just as good, just as good.
To me, I personally like both Illmatic and It Was Written. I think those there's no skips. You can
Yeah,
listen to it straight through.
yeah.
Um, and
And,
I
and look, don't get me wrong. I
yeah,
like it was written. Don't
yeah.
get me wrong. But to me, it's almost like KRS-One. With first album, second album, it's
True.
like
Yeah,
they're both good.
yeah.
But I still got to give it. I still got to get a title of Criminal Minded. Personally, I don't know what your views are on that one.
I love KRS One. I don't remember the full. I have. It's been a while since I listened to KRS One albums, but KRS One was definitely one of my favorite rappers coming up. I want to say he was probably one generation ahead of me, but
Right,
I was a student of the game. I listened to everybody, KRS One, Special Ed, Brand Nubian. Like I listened to a whole
right.
slew.
Golden era. That's the golden era
Yeah.
of hip hop.
But yeah, I would probably say Criminal Minded, and there's one other one. I can't think of the name of the album. I think it kind of has like a
Edutainment.
I don't think it's edutainment. It has to step into this world or step.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's Was that I Got Next or Return of the Boom Bap?
It might be I Got Next. I Got
Oh,
Next.
oh, you know what? No, it's on KRS-One. I think that's on KRS-One in '95, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what, to your point though, I didn't realize this. Because I think I got you by some years. But the Criminal Minded came out in '87. KRS-One, the album you're referencing, came out almost a decade later in '95. So
Right.
that's a huge difference. Like
Yeah.
if you're
And
like
so
7 or 17.
I was entering, well, 95 I was already in high school.
Right, right.
But like in 87 I was 7 years old. I was still heavy into hip hop, but I didn't start writing my own raps until 11. So that was about 91-ish. But
Right.
I listened to them all, and my parents played them. I played them, I was a big student of the game, big student of the game. But
Word.
yeah,
But circling back to the reason why I appreciate what you're saying
yeah,
is because again, as an artist, I personally thought that this was my best work, and I was telling everybody leading up to it, hey, I think it's my best work, but the audience ultimately decides because it doesn't matter what I think. So when people respond favorably to it, I really appreciate that. So thank you.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the film has only been out for a few days, right?
Came out on Friday, April 25th. Yeah, so it's been out now for what is that? I don't know, 5 or 6 days, I guess.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
5 or 6 days. Yep.
And obviously it's been being received well. It's on the front page of Tubi.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
you won't miss it. Yeah, you're doing amazing, man, because not everybody gets that type of attention on any streaming platform, unless their film is uh, of a certain stature and a
Hmm.
certain quality. So kudos to you for that. Let me ask, how does one go about landing a opportunity or a deal to where you can create a Tubi original, or even let's just say BET Plus, with the success of your film with Neo.
Yeah, it's funny because I was just I had the semester ended at UGA on Monday, the 28th,
Hmm.
and for screenwriting, we didn't meet as a group for that last class. I had individual meetings. So one of my students, she was asking the very same thing. She's like, how could I get one of my scripts? Because I use my scripts and my films in my directing class, my screenwriting class. She's like, how can I get my scripts, at a production company, at a studio? And I told her, I said, honestly, what you should do as a student coming out of school, people see students as assistants. What you should do is be writing shorts,
Yeah.
writing and directing shorts, sending them into film festivals, building your brand that way, and writing because, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And that goes back to, my situation with BET Plus. That was an adaptation of a novel written by Tiffany L. Warren called The Replacement Wife. And Tiffany and I met on the film on the book publishing circuit a
Wow.
decade, what, almost 10 years ago.
Mhm.
So she actually pitched me to BET to adapt her novel and then direct it into a film. And then check this out. Who she was pitching to was someone who had produced The Gilded Six Bits, my thesis film at NYU, who's a VP at BET, Larissa Bates.
Wow.
So
Okay.
were it not for Tiffany, meeting me and then pitching me to somebody who I knew, never would have happened.
Right.
So it wasn't about how talented I was, how smart I was. It was none of that. And then the situation with Tubi, one of my film school classmates, his name is Garland McLaren. He's a professor at SCAD now. He was at UGA teaching cinematography, and I teach writing and directing. So he came to UGA, and we made several short films. I wrote and directed. He shot it, and then he introduced me to the creative executive at Mar Vista Entertainment,
Mhm.
who was the executive for both of my films, Twisted Marriage Therapist and
Yeah.
um, this current one. But here's how it went with that. Once he introduced me to her name is Brittany Clemens, brilliant executive. Once he introduced me to Brittany, I pitched like 3 or 4 projects, including both of my novels, both of my
Good.
adaptations,
Good. Yeah.
but they passed on everything. They passed on everything, right? So I'm like, oh man, I'm crushed. However, the screenplay that I had adapted for my second novel, Snitch, she liked the writing, sent it up the chain, and then they offered me Twisted Marriage Therapist. So,
So
the way
when they offered you Twisted Marriage Therapist, Was that yours or was that a
No, no, they came to me with a basic premise of a marriage therapist. You know, the story goes wrong when the marriage therapist targets the wife of
right?
the husband of the couple that she's counseling and gets him committed so she can steal his wife. So they came at me with a basic premise. And then, my first job as a screenwriter is to figure out what's not working with the premise. And thankfully, both Mar Vista and Tubi gave me the latitude to do what needed to happen to get the story where it was. So I had creative freedom to make it into something that worked, that made sense, and that was entertaining. But to get back to your question, in both instances, both with BET and with Tubi, people that I knew introduced me and got me in. It wasn't like someone saw my work and said, "Hey, we want to work with this dude." I mean, those things do happen. It hasn't personally happened with me,
Right.
but every job that I've booked in film, I can trace back to someone who I met at NYU, which is crazy. So relationship capital is more valuable than any currency.
Mm. Oh man, say that again.
Look, I tell my that's one of my top hits to my students. I'm like, relationship capital is more valuable than any currency because if you have the relationships, you can get the currency. If you don't have the relationships, you ain't gonna have no currency.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, that's really how I'm approaching all of this with what everything that I'm doing on my side, the Black Script. I'm open to talking to any and everybody because you never know who you're talking to. You never know, what relationships people have, and you never know if your vision aligns with some of the some other folks' vision. And I feel like the more minds that come together, especially within our community, a lot of times we like to gatekeep and keep things for ourselves and not share, or because we're afraid that somebody's going to come and take my spot.
Sure.
We don't share that information, but if we come together, share that information, allow access, introduce people to one another, then we can get a lot more of these projects off the ground, and we won't really be complaining as much anymore when our projects never see the light of day or they
Right.
get canceled or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that notion for sure. Your relationships. I'm sorry. What did you said it better than I did?
Relationship capital is more valuable than any currency. More
Uh,
valuable than any currency because with the relationships, you'll get the currency, but without it,
yeah.
you're going to be a very talented person not working. A
Hmm.
very creative person not working, you
Hmm.
know. Um, but that's why it's important. See, something else that I tell my students too, though, is that your competition isn't in this classroom. Your competition isn't even on this campus. This is the beginning of your network. These are the people who you're going to be hiring. They're
Yeah.
going to be hiring you. So it's like your goal should be to be cool with everyone here. You can't be best friends with everyone, but in 10 years, you want everybody to return your call. You
Right.
don't be like, man, Kevin? I wish Kevin would call my office again. I remember what he did you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
don't be that person. Be cool because you don't know who you as you said, you don't know who you're meeting. You don't know when a Fruitvale is going to become a Sinners.
Yes.
It's not a long time. Fruitvale to Sinners in this little short. Who would have thought?
And let me tell you.
But imagine if you would have screwed this brother over and now he's making movies, that make $1 billion at the box office, but you screwed him over because you were on whatever you were on.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Circling back to an unusual suspect.
Yes.
I have a few more questions there. Um, when it came time for production, how long did production last? From the time that you guys, I guess, how many days did it take for you to shoot this project?
So we had 14 days of principal photography. We had 2 weeks of prep, and we were in post. All said, so whenever I sign on to do like one of these, original movies for streamers,
Hmm.
it's a year of my life. It's like 6 months, between getting notes from the executives and me executing them and all that. That's 6 months to write it, and then but from the time you shoot and take it all the way through post, that's another 6 months.
Hmm.
It's like a year.
And then the writing, did you submit it and get several? You have to do several rewrites.
Oh,
Uh,
100%. And so just for so the audience knows, so Tubi is actually owned by Fox.
right. Hmm.
Mar Vista, which doesn't exist anymore, it's been folded into Fox Entertainment Studios. Mar Vista was also owned by Fox. So when you're doing a Tubi original film, it's a Hollywood movie. I mean, Tubi and Mar Vista are on the Fox lot. The executives that are, over your production that are giving you notes, they're on the Fox lot. So it's a Hollywood movie. It's not an independent film. So yes, to your question, but that's all in the agreement before, your writer's agreement lays out how many weeks you have for each step. And for this, it's about writing, or script.
Hmm.
It was three drafts of the treatment, two drafts of the outline, a draft of the script, a rewrite, and a polish. So that's all contract. That's all in the contract. The amount of time that I have to execute something, the amount of time they have to give me notes, that's all laid out. Which is why, again, it takes 6 months.
Right.
Um, so, that's the other part too. When you're talking about an original movie, that's very different than people who license movies to Tubi. They make this movie and then they license it. They don't have the benefit of Hollywood creative executives giving you notes.
Yeah. Yeah. And
You
through
know,
that process, you're also building relationship and rapport with all of those executives too. So
100%.
dealing with them, you also want to be mindful as to who you're talking to, how professional you come across, and are you delivering on time and these things of that nature, because oftentimes they're going to remember that, and when they need somebody else for another project, they're going to remember, okay, who was reliable, who actually delivered on all of my requests, and so on and so forth, and came back with a polished project, and they're going to say Booker T. Madison is my guy.
And something else that that you made me think about with your response is, so I had to learn how to receive and execute notes. It's
Hmm.
one thing when you're doing an independent short or even an independent feature and you're just going for it, you
Yeah.
know, and you might ask your homeboy, your homegirl what they think. But when you get, so for example, the treatment for an unusual suspect, let's just use that as an example. The treatment, I believe, was 6 pages.
Okay.
Take a guess at how many pages of notes I got on that, if you want to just take a guess.
If it's 6 pages,
6 page treatment. How many pages of notes you think I got?
I would say maybe like three.
Eight.
Oh, wow. Okay.
8 pages of
But
notes
this
for a
was the
6 page
first.
treatment.
This was
Yeah,
the first time when you submitted it, they came back with 8 pages. Uh,
8 pages of notes.
what did they? Was it? Did they? And you could be as transparent as you want.
Yeah.
Um, did they feel like there was a lot wrong there, or how many alterations did you have to make? Why
Well,
did it
yeah,
take
well,
8 pages?
it was again. I was contracted for three. I forget. It was either two or three drafts on the outline. I mean, I'm sorry, the treatment. I forget. Two or
Mm.
three drafts. So it's not so much that it's bad. It's development. That's what development is.
Oh, got it. Got it.
Like
Okay.
when you're developing a photograph. When you first put that thing in the chemicals, you don't expect the image to be there fully. It has to develop.
Right.
It's the same way, with getting and receiving notes. So it wasn't like I was discouraged and, crushed. I'm a writer for hire. This is what I do. So
Mm,
learning how to one, receive notes and not take it personally, not be defensive, and
mm.
then knowing how to execute notes, right? Because you have executives from the production company and you have executives from the network, both sounding off. So you
Right.
probably got about maybe six different people, and they break it down with general notes, then structured and story notes, character notes, production notes, and page notes. So it's very, very specific and detailed. Why? Because this is their money. This is not I'm not putting up the money. So they need to know that they're getting exactly what it is that they're paying for.
Mm.
So, it's a skill that I did not know when I first came out of film school because, I had a couple of project scripts that people were attached to, and they would send me notes, and I would send back an entirely different script. I did not know how to execute the notes. I know they were like, okay, this is interesting, but bro, what are you doing?
Right.
Of
Yes.
course, none of those scripts got made. Why? Because I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
I
But
didn't know what I.
and it takes time to learn all of that. It takes time to know how to respond, know
So,
give exactly what they're asking for, and be able to execute it properly. You know.
yep,
Um,
yep. Because I can like what I can like my solution to whatever the note was. But I got two things going. I want to create something that's aesthetically pleasing to me because my name is on it.
Right.
But then I have to fulfill the notes from these five or six people, most of whom I've never met. Everything is on Zoom now.
Yeah.
It's not like going in person. So it's a challenge. And then here's the other part. You have to get it right because they're not going to keep going back and forth if you can't get it right.
Mm,
It's like if they can pull the plug, the writing agreement that I have is it's called a step deal. So, you get paid with each step in that agreement, and they can pull the plug at any time. So it is high stakes because you negotiate a price for that script and then you get paid in those steps. But if they pull the plug on you because you're not getting the job done, sorry. You
Now,
know,
okay, so and I know kind of jumping, all over the place a little bit, but um, when you're saying that if they're paying you every step of the way, and let's just say that you get to a point on any particular screenplay that you're working on, and they decide to pull the plug, do you have to give the money that they've already paid you back?
so thankfully not.
Okay.
But if you negotiate this number, right?
Yeah.
You're an artist, okay, okay, boom. Contract is signed. So I know that okay, this is how much I'm getting. So you start budgeting and planning
Right.
because again, it's a 6 month process. So and let's put another wrinkle in it. Let's say that they love everything that you're doing. Let's say it's not they pull the plug because you're not executing the notes. You can get the script written, and then that script still has to be greenlit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you could write the script and you get the number and everything. And me as a writer director, I have a separate agreement as for the director's agreement. So if I write this thing for 6 months, I'm expecting, okay, now we're going to greenlight this thing, and then I'll start getting paid to direct it. But
Mhm.
if they decide they don't want to, invest anything else in the movie, yeah, you got your number for writing the script, but I'm sorry, that's it. We didn't greenlight the script. It didn't turn out how we wanted. It's not the movie we want to make, or the tides have changed inside the network, or whatever. It could be any number of reasons.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that happening too. And it's more common than you know, actually.
Way more common than you know.
A lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of projects that get picked up, but never really see the light of day, because somewhere down the line of the process, either the company shifts directions or maybe it just didn't work out the way that their vision was in their mind, and the end project, or once they get to a certain point and they realize like this is not going to work, they just halt it. There was a movie, I think this might be it was a Pharrell movie that was supposed to come out,
Oh
all-star
yeah.
cast, all-star
Yep.
cast. They get through they filmed everything, they get to post, and I want to say maybe like 12 days into post, they realize that it wasn't what they thought it was going to be, and they can it.
Crazy. Crazy. And it's of course that story was set in Virginia Beach, but they were shooting in Richmond,
Yes. Yeah.
which is disappointing. I know for the Hampton Road 757 there. It's like, come on. If the
Right.
movie's about us, we need to shoot it here.
Yes.
I don't know what the decision was behind that, but yeah, that's wild and it happens, and like for example, if they pay for this script that I wrote, they own it. I don't own it. So
Right.
then whenever stuff goes and turn around, and then you're like, hey, what about the script? And somebody has to pay all that they paid to get it out of turnaround,
Mm,
just to get it done. So it's a hustle. It's a hustle,
yeah.
the film and television game.
Yeah. And in ways, going back to the music business, it's a lot like the music business, just on the other side. It's TV and film opposed to, releasing an album or singles, and um, yeah.
Look, I say this that they're intrinsically linked. George Lucas said that sound is 50% of a movie, and I 100% agree with that. And if you listen closely to any all of my films, the music in it, the different genres, the type of music, all of that stuff is as a direct result of me and my love for music and being a former artist. If you listen to the music and the sound design,
Yeah.
or of course I don't
It's
make the film.
quality all
Yeah.
the way through. I mean, that's why I said, watching it, I didn't get the feeling that I was watching, you know, I don't want to call it a homemade project or anything like that. But it just didn't seem of a certain budget, or of a certain status. So like I felt like it was already polished. And to your point, I see why it was a Tubi original, not just a film that you created and then sent into Tubi.
And license it to them. Yeah, because BET does that, Tubi does that, Amazon, Apple,
Hmm.
all of these platforms they license they create originals which they use to drive subscribers. And
Yes.
then they license content which are, when your homie's like, yo, it's on Amazon Prime, it's on Tubi, it's on this.
Right.
And look, hey, more power to it because independent film now are on these streamers. It's not like it was back in the day. You go to a movie theater to see an independent film. That's not gonna happen. You
Yeah.
know, you you're gonna point and click on your iPad or your phone.
And they're making a killing too. Like they're uh, no shade whatsoever because and more power to them. You know, their hustle is strong. They have their own fan bases. They're building their own fan bases, their own IP, their own market, in a lot of cases. And a lot of the audience doesn't really care about quality, whereas you and I are more sticklers about quality and wanting to deliver a polished project. But I still kudos to them because they're actually they're getting their work off the ground and they're learning as they go. But not only that, they're also earning as they go. Um, and through that process, they begin to develop themselves, and you watch them develop in real time. And you can be a fan from day one all the way up until they release a major motion picture or something like that. So,
You know what it reminds me of is, so whenever I was a published author. I wasn't self-published. And some published authors would kind of look down their nose at self-published authors, right? And
oh
look, I knew self-published authors who were making more money than me, and I had a book contract, a whole lot more money than me. And actually, one of my best author friends, Victoria Christopher Murray, she started off self-published. She's a New York Times best-selling author right now.
wow.
So, but it goes back to what we said. It's like you don't know who's doing Fruitvale who's going to be doing Sinners.
Yeah,
Just like you don't know Victoria, she's doing her self-published thing, and now she's a New York Times best-selling author. So it's like, don't hate on people, don't shade people,
right.
don't hate, relate. That's one of my favorite phrases. Don't hate.
Relate. I really do think a genius move to have IP in multiple markets. And it also helps sell the film too because if they can see it in multiple areas, they know they can make more money and it'll drive an audience, things of that nature. But I do know one person personally, who um, she actually started her career and started her own publishing company first, but she started off as a novelist. Her name is Tressa Azarel. I don't know if
She
you know.
she produced The Sound of Christmas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Megamind Media.
Look, me and Trust done made a number one movie because That Sound of Christmas was the number one movie on BET Plus Christmas of 2022.
Oh, wow. Okay. I did not realize that. Okay.
Yeah, and BET Network submitted the film to the Television Academy for Emmy consideration for best television movie. We didn't get a nomination, but the fact that the network thought enough of it to even submit it to the Academy was a
Yeah.
major accomplishment.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know her not like personally, like I can just, reach out to her and get her on the phone right now, but we've had conversations. I've interviewed her. I met her in person several times. Um I live in Virginia. She lives in Maryland.
Where in Virginia? Where in
Uh,
Virginia do you live?
I'm about 30 minutes outside of DC. I'm in Woodbridge.
Oh, okay. So you're in Northern Virginia. I have a
Yes.
brother who lives in Triangle.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, not far at all. So you out here, are you out here often?
I haven't been, when I lived in, Hampton Roads, because after I left New York, I moved back to, Virginia Beach, the Virginia Beach area.
Hmm.
So I would go a lot more now than I live, here in Atlanta.
Okay.
But I haven't been to his house now in a few years. But yeah, my brother lives in Triangle and, commutes to DC
Oh,
to
wow, man.
yeah.
Uh, Small world. You never know. We might have crossed paths at some point. Who knows?
Right. Look, we might be related. You just,
Right.
I mean, our history, we laugh about it, but unfortunately, you really don't know the way our people were, their families broken up and sold away and that kind of, you don't know. You're like, man, homeboy looked like me. Homegirl looked like me. And then she might be your cousin.
Right. She might very well be. Yeah, no, that's really, really interesting. I just think it's genius to do it that way. And then there's another person who's been doing it kind of low profile, Reese Witherspoon.
Oh yeah, Reese Witherspoon. Yeah,
So
she's
she has a book club, but the book club serves a purpose. Is she'll discover these new authors, bring them in, hype up their book, see what book actually gets a lot of attention from from her audience, and
mhm,
whatever book is engaging enough, she'll turn that into a movie.
yeah, and she's making a whole lot more money with her production company than she ever made as a
Yes,
as an actor. You know,
yes, yeah. So I think that when things are done that way, and there's not a lot of people doing it, but the ones that are doing it are successful. I feel like we need to really pay attention and watch, what it is that they're doing that is making this work. And especially within our community, I feel like sometimes, even though we are very innovative and creative and find new ways to bring new things to the market,
mhm.
I feel like we also have the wherewithal to take something that is working and make it bigger and better and stronger. We just have to know how to do it.
Put
Um,
some Lowrys on that thing.
right, exactly, exactly. As far as your writing goes, when you're writing a film like An Unusual Suspect, where do you draw your inspiration from? Like, how do you come up with with the storyline?
Mhm. It's a great question. And an unusual suspect, like Twisted Marriage Therapist, they came to me with a germ of an idea. Uh, an unusual suspect, the idea that they came to me with was uh, quite different than what came out on the other side. Again, they gave me the creative freedom to make it my own and to, do what needed to be done to make it something that works. Which is why it's so great to have development execs who are smart, and you work together to come up with something great.
Mhm.
Um, but it's to answer your question, what I come up with the ideas. The first thing is, I tell my students this that, you should base your characters, and this has nothing to do with genre. Base your characters on real life, not other movies and TV shows that you've done, because some people do that, and that's why their work is derivative.
Yeah,
Uh, but my first thing is being a student of the human condition. Okay, well, this is the protagonist. This is her goal. Who's the chief opposition to to her achieving her goal?
mhm.
It's the antagonist. Okay, so now, so what are the events that are going to, because with the screenplay that's written well, everything is an obstacle or an opportunity to the protagonist achieving their goal. Everything in the movie,
Right,
obstacle and opportunity. So that's how I, engage in my plotting. But here's a big one is that plotting comes from knowing character, not the other way around. Because some people will say, "Hey, let me come up with this great plot," but they don't know their characters. My first step is to do what I call a bone structure document, and this comes from it's a book called The Art of Dramatic Writing by Laos Egri. One
okay,
of the best books on writing. For those who are interested, please cop that. But he has this. It's a bone structure document, and what it does is it looks at a character from three different dimensions: physiology, sociology, and psychology. And it asks these questions like favorite subjects in school, parents, the union work. I mean, these weird questions that you wouldn't even think about. So, and I even have my students in all of my classes, the first thing that they do, because my directing students have to make a 5 to 7 minute short film, that's their final project. My feature screenwriting students have to write a feature screenplay. So the first thing they have to do is know the protagonist. So
right,
they do a bone structure document for the protagonist and their antagonist. And it's amazing how once you know the protagonist, you know what they want, then the plot just starts to fall into place. Who's the protagonist? What's their goal? Who's the chief opposition to them achieving that goal? Because that creates the what? The central conflict. And
right.
then everything springs from there.
Wow. What's the name of the book again?
The Art of Dramatic Writing
The
by Laos, Lajos Egri, Egri. You should definitely cop it. It's a good book.
Yeah, no, that's definitely going. It's making it to my list for sure, man. I'm
And
getting
I'm
back.
going to send you the bone structure because I
Okay.
have this as a Word doc. I'm
Yeah,
going to send it to you, because then it's in the book. But I've been using that thing for years. And
yeah,
that's the first thing I do. Getting back to your question, the first thing I do when I book something, or if I'm writing on spec, is I do a bone structure document for my protagonist because you cannot write a character well that you don't know well.
right, right. That's good to know. That's good to know. I'm getting back into my writing bag. I set it to the side for a while. Um, but yeah, I definitely want to reapproach it in a more serious manner this time. Before I was just kind of freestyling, trying to figure out, my characters and my storyline and everything as I went,
Mhm.
and I would oftentimes get stuck in a lot of
Probably three-quarters of the way through, right? About
yeah.
three-quarters. That's when it happens.
But
It's going
I
great.
have the whole story in my head. Is just
Right.
being able to pace it and put everything where it needs to go, and
Yeah.
um yeah, so
So you'll appreciate this. So this is something else I tell my screenwriting students that good screenplays aren't written, they're built, step by step, starting with a log line, because the problem that most people have when they get stuck is they start drafting too early.
yeah.
So, for example, in this semester, spring semester, the students didn't start drafting until and they're doing all the pre-work, log line, premise statement, magnificent plot points, all these things, beat sheet, treatment.
Mhm.
But they didn't start drafting until 2 weeks ago.
Oh wow.
But once they start drafting, once you've done all the pre-work,
Hmm.
then you're writing according to an outline. You're writing according to how the whole story is figured out. I didn't write either of my novels that way. And if I ever write another novel, I will outline it because it's like, why wouldn't you outline? It's a whole lot easier to come up with an outline than to try to generate a 120-page script off the rip.
Yeah.
Oh, that rhymes. Look, hey, that rhymes.
Right. Right. You spitting bars over there, man. Um, yeah, I definitely need to get back into shape there, as far as my writing goes, for sure. Now, let's talk a little bit about your direction, and this also probably lends heavily on the DP as well, but your camera angles, the attention to detail in your shot list, and everything that you showcase throughout this film of An Unusual Suspect, I thought you did really well too. I could just pick up on the things that you paid attention to, and you knew to let the audience know to pay attention to this or to focus on this, steer your eyes in this direction, and a lot of it helped tell the story and helped a lot with the pacing. I feel like that's a skill that you have to have
Oh, 100%.
initially, and then you build upon that over time and make it stronger as you go. And in this film, I thought that you did an amazing job there too. I love the camera angles and um, the different perspectives that you were able to give.
Well, thank you. And this is what I tell my directing class is that the two most important skills for a director to have pre-visualization, the ability to see and hear the whole movie before you ever call action, and communication. And that's your ability to hire a team to execute that vision from your DP to the composer to everyone. So, and this is something else, because, directing too, when someone says they direct, it really depends on that person. When you say, well, if you're a director, what all do you do? Because not everyone who directs knows about framing and composition and camera movement,
Right.
and forced perspective and lensing. That's something that I learned in film school and continue to develop. It's not like you ever arrive with that. But like I tell my students in directing class, when you meet with the DP, you already have your shot list done.
Hmm.
And of course the DP, you're going to collaborate, and I have every movie there's
Right.
shots that the DP has better ideas than I did, but I never show up. I never go to a DP without already having, my lookbook, my mood board, my color palette, my shot list. That's already done before we even have a conversation.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you have some directors who, if that's not their strength, they're leaning on the DP to do the shot list and to come up with the angles and all that stuff. To me, it's you're surrendering a huge part of visual storytelling when you're not directing the camera, when you're not directing the blocking and the interplay between the camera and the actors.
Right. Right.
So I'm a very hands-on director, so I have a vision, and that's what I'm hired to have. And then of course I have to be able to communicate that vision to my team. So for this film, for example, the lookbook that I developed, that went to everyone from the network exec, to to the production company, everyone. That was our blueprint. And I developed that before, the movie was greenlit because I knew what my vision was.
Hmm. And it allows for everybody to be on the same page, to have the same understanding as to how everything's supposed to look, where everything's supposed to be, so on and so forth. But not only that, you're saving a lot of time and money by having all of this done ahead of time instead of, you arriving and then just trying to figure it out or relying on your DP to figure it out for you, then yeah, like you said, you're surrendering all your creativity, really, in a sense. It becomes the DP's film.
Right. And you're directing the performances and the actors, and that's cool,
Yeah.
but for my part, it's everything. It's the music, it's the sound design, all of that is according to a vision that I had before I ever called action.
Yeah.
That's that pre-visualization, that ability to see and hear the entire movie before anyone is even hired.
Mm.
And that's a natural gift. I mean, it's like, and as a rapper, you pre-visualize, you're writing about these stories.
Exactly.
You see the streets that you talk. I was on 145th and 219th, and then I did this and that. You pre-visualize it. And
Hmm.
you probably had vision for your music videos and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
And that all lends to the attention to detail because
Right.
as a rapper and then as a writer, you want to express as much detail that you can because especially when you are a rapper or a musician who writes their own songs,
Yeah.
you're really painting the picture with your words. And so you have to be careful with your words in order to be able to deliver that vision. But once you get into the visual realm of things, then whatever you couldn't showcase with your words, you then bring to life visually, but you can do both at the same time. And if you can convey that with your words and with the vision, then I feel like it's that much stronger and um, more more engaging, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so the two people that I will use on every movie, the editor, Bridget Smith, she edited this and Twisted Marriage Therapist, and then my composer, Teddy Alexander Bishop, he's done all three of my films. Met him through Tressa actually, because she brought him on to Sound of Christmas. I hadn't worked with him before.
Mm,
So once we worked together, it was over. It's like, yo, every movie I make. But the reason why I love them so much is because they both make me better.
right.
The saying goes that you direct a movie twice, once on set and the second time in the editing room. So Bridget, she's the director herself. Actually, she's directed more features than me.
Okay.
How I would feel very insecure making a movie without her cutting. Same thing with Teddy. I feel very insecure making a movie and he's not doing the score, because both of them they just take my work to another level.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Everything that you did and that everybody else, behind the scenes also did. The cast, crew, everybody did an amazing job on an unusual suspect. I have not seen your other film, well, your other two films. I know about the Christmas film with Neo,
Another Christmas, yeah, that movie went crazy, man. That movie.
Sound of Christmas. I haven't watched it. I
That
will
movie
make it a
was
point to watch, as well as the other
Twisted
two.
Marriage Therapist.
Yeah,
Twisted Marriage Therapist. Get
Twisted Marriage
ready.
Therapist.
Get ready. That one, it's a crazy movie, dog.
Okay, okay. Well, let me ask you, what's next now that you have this movie out? I know you're going to be pushing this for quite some time, but do you have any projects that are up next or in
Yes,
the works?
I'm working on a rom-com, which is exciting. And this is an idea that I came up with and pitched with Fox Entertainment Studios.
Mm.
And it's a situation where, Fox Entertainment Studios, like, most production companies, like Universal Television, they don't just make shows for NBC. They make, so the executive that I'm working with is going to be pitching this treatment that I'm working on for the rom-com to like four different networks. So
Wow.
I hope that that's my next movie, but as it go, I gotta get the treatment tight, and then she's got to pitch that sucker, and then somebody got to say yes. But that's the one that I'm coming in hot on. But I'm also trying to get a procedural setup as well, which is called Fog City, which is set in San Francisco. And the lead on that is let me not give the idea away. Somebody take my
Yeah,
idea and get it sold before me. Right? They get
you
it sold.
gotta
I'm like,
save
"Hey,
it for the.
that's my show." It's like, yes, I'm trying to get a series
Okay.
set up, and then I'm also writing another Christmas film, which is another. It's going to be another adaptation, and then a horror film
Oh,
started, but I've started and then boom, Twisted Marriage Therapist got in the way. Then I tried to finish it, and then an Unusual Suspect got in the way. So those are my four projects that I'm really, really sweet on right now.
Let me ask you this. Uh, is the horror film, does that already have a home? Do you already have?
Oh, no, I'm writing that on spec. Yeah, no, no, that is not set up yet.
Do what you will with this information, but I've recently partnered with a company called Killer Shot Films. They are actively looking for horror films, horror features. The lady that I'm working with, she's based in New York. Her name is Victoria Burt.
Mhm.
She is actively looking for horror features to purchase and then eventually, put into production. So if you have something that, and right now they're only looking for, through the black script, they're only looking for the first page to draw them in. If it draws enough interest, they would like to know more, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
uh, and yeah, they might be interested in wanting to work with you, or maybe helping fund the project, or who knows.
I'm always pitching, and wherever something lands is where it lands. Look, I've been trying to get my two novels made for what, almost a decade. Oh, what, 2011 and 2009? Over a decade. No,
Mhm.
that's not a decade. What? How long is that? 10 years? 15? Oh, yeah, it's been a
Yeah,
while.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a minute.
And,
But
and I've had named people attached to option, and then then nothing happens, then they go
yeah,
away. So
it's
it's
not easy. It's
it's
not
the
easy.
it's the vicissitudes of film and television production.
Yeah, it's not easy at all. You don't become famous or well known overnight. It's a craft that you have to fall in love with, and you have to actively pursue it each and every single day, and just continue to nurture it, and over time things will work out. If the stars align. It doesn't work for everybody, um, and this is one of those businesses that you have to come to that understanding. However, it doesn't mean that you can't create or produce something and put something out. It's just that you have to figure out what way works best for you, and whether that be on the independent front, or if are constantly pitching and getting picked up by networks and studios, um, to green light your projects. Um, but yeah, it's all about getting in where you fit in and making it happen. It's a hustle, and it's no easy task, man. So I salute everybody that is a part of this process, in this field, and is actually able to get their art, give their art to the world and for the world to see, because not everybody gets there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So lastly, I like to give my guests the final word, whether that be a piece of advice, a
Sure.
quote that you like to live by, or words of encouragement, or maybe something that was passed down to you by somebody you worked with in the past, or something like that. You can say one of the three, or you can say all three. It's up to you.
Well, I'll just share with those who are interested in writing and directing that there's never been a better time to do it. So, this phone right here is a 4K camera,
Hmm.
which produces prettier pictures than the 16 millimeter film that we shot on in film school. You can also edit for free
Hmm.
on here. So if you want to and there's free screenwriting software. So if you want to write and direct. But here's the key part about that. Don't do it trying to blow up. Do it trying to learn. Because when you're good enough, opportunities will manifest themselves. But too often people are like, oh, if I'm gonna do this, then it has to be great. It has to go viral. No, learn first. Get in your cocoon, develop, and then when it's time for you to pop out, you will. Look, my first feature, I was 52 years old when I did my first feature, but I didn't quit. I kept creating. And, it's not going to take everyone that long, but it took me that long. And if I decided, I'm going to stop, then these last 3 years of, writing and directing three features in 3 years, it wouldn't have happened had I thrown in the towel. But I was just trying to stay in shape, by making shorts so that when the feature opportunities came, I was ready. So get your camera out, make your movies. It doesn't matter if they suck. My first two films in film school sucked. So make a movie. Go out there and do it. Get your friends together, shoot it in your house. Make something.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And they only suck to you because as the perfectionist, you know, oftentimes we are the biggest critic of our own work, but to other people, they might have thought it was great or amazing. You really never know, and it's subjective too at the same time. So
Absolutely.
yeah, kudos to you, man. Keep pushing. An Unusual Suspect is a great film for people to watch on Tubi. If you haven't watched it yet, go turn on Tubi, check it out. I promise you, you guys will enjoy it. Amazing cast, amazing writing, amazing directing by the one and only Booker T. Madison.
My
Thank you so
brother, I
much,
appreciate
Booker,
you.
man. Thank you. Thank you so much, man.
All right, take care now, and thanks for having. Hey, look, have me on again. This has been a great chat.